I think, to be fair, the truth is my father was my role model.
Okay.
He ran his own hospital. It was Ike Memorial Hospital.
Tonight on Chim Talk Africa, I'm joined by a woman who didn't just build a hospital, but one who set out to redefine healthcare in Nigeria. Dr. Onyia is the founder of Phaelon Memorial Hospital in Lagos. And she shares with me tonight her journey of loss, pain, tragedy, as well as resilience, triumph, and joy that has led her and her team to be the first in Africa to achieve a prestigious 5-star safe care rating, proving that world-class healthcare isn't just about where you are located, but the standards that you keep. Tonight on Chim Talk Africa. Hi there, welcome to this week's episode of your show. I'm Chim, your host, and my guest is a mother, a mentor, a relentless advocate for patient-centered care, and a woman who believes that every African, irrespective of their status, deserves world-class health care right here on home soil. My guest today is Dr. Onyia. She is the founder and managing director of Phaelon Memorial Hospital here in Lagos. You're welcome to the show, Dr. Ngozi.
Thank you very much, Chim.
Dr. Ngozi, what we do, if you don't mind, I'll call you Ngozi. What we do is that we start our guests up with rapid fire questions, things that you can easily answer, but it helps us to get to know a bit of your fun side. So I'm going to throw these questions at you, and you're free to answer it as it relates to Dr. Ngozi. Cat or dogs, which one do you prefer?
Dogs, please.
Do you have one?
Not now.
You used to?
Yes.
What's your best meal?
Okra soup.
Why was it difficult to answer?
Because I'm not much of a foodie, but
okay.
Okra soup.
Apple or oranges?
Apple.
For any day.
Yeah.
If you were stranded on an island, you already had your Bible, what other book would you like to have along?
The Speed of Trust by Steve Covey Jr.
Okay. Okay. Your favorite movie?
The Sound of Music.
Windows or aisles when you fly?
Oh, aisle.
Aisle, okay. Are you a morning person or a night person?
Morning.
Okay. Your earliest memory as a person?
I think my earliest memory as a person was when we lived in Badagry.
Okay.
My father worked for the Western region in the General Hospital Badagry. And I remember, the greenery,
okay,
going on a boat. They had something called a launch. They used to call it
okay,
like an ambulance that was a boat.
Okay.
So that's some of my earliest memories. Also, I have memories of Ilaro, and there was chameleons. So that kind of thing. These were all before I turned 3.
Wow. Favorite city in the world?
Difficult, but something between Barcelona and Cape Town. Those are my 2 favorite cities.
Favorite cities, okay. What will be the one question you want to ask God once you get to heaven? Why
do children suffer?
As a doctor, you must have grappled with that a lot.
As a pediatrician, yes.
Okay.
Children suffer.
What would be your favorite song?
Secular music, One Moment in Time by Whitney Houston.
Okay.
Gospel music, 10,000 Reasons.
Oh, that worship one by Matt Redman. Okay. What would you say is your most unused spiritual gift?
I suspect I have a gift of prophecy.
But you haven't used it much?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Or maybe, should I call it word of knowledge?
Okay.
But I haven't used it much again in recent times.
Something about you that most people who think they know you don't know.
I don't think I have secrets. I'm a very open person. I'm extremely, maybe too open.
Too open. Everything that should be known about Dr. Ngozi is already known.
One page.
One page. Open book. If you were not doing what you were doing right now, what would you be doing?
Nothing else. This is what I've always wanted to do.
This is your passion.
This is my passion, my ikigai.
And if you had 6 months left, you knew that it's time to go, what would be one thing that you must get accomplished?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Maybe
until the Lord calls you.
The Lord calls me.
Wow. So that's our rapid fire with Dr. Ngozi. Now, let's go back to the beginning. What was it like growing up? You've talked about Badagry. You mentioned Badagry just now.
Happy.
Happy.
Very happy. I had lovely parents who loved their children very, very much. They lived for us. My dad was a doctor, like I said earlier. He was my role model. My mom was a teacher, beautiful woman and very kind woman. My mother was a Yoruba woman. My father was an Igbo man from Asaba. We lived, there are three of us. I had two siblings and lots of cousins who lived with us, mostly my father's nephews and nieces who lived with us. So I had a very happy childhood. I was a very well-loved child, balanced. I didn't want for anything. I had a head start in life, I think, And then all that came to a screeching halt in 1967 with the outbreak of the Civil War, when we had to cross over from Benin, where we lived at the time, because there had been the referendum, there had been the formation of the Midwestern region. My father transferred his services from the Western region to the Midwestern region, because we are Midwesterners. And then we had to move from Benin to Asaba, and ultimately to Biafra. Then it became difficult, but still, it appeared to be fun for us because we were sheltered by our parents who made sure we didn't starve. When I look at our photographs now and I look at a few things, I realize we were malnourished, but we didn't starve. And yeah.
That was childhood.
That was childhood, till I turned 10. The war ended the year I turned 10.
Was it because of your dad you became a doctor?
Yes, he was my role model. So that's all I've ever wanted to be. When I applied to university, then we had direct entry. First choice, second choice, third choice. First choice was medicine, second choice, medicine, third. I knew if I didn't make it the first time, I'll try again.
It was going to be medicine.
Yeah, thankfully, no I made it here.
And let's talk about Nigerian breweries. You were the first woman to reach a senior management position in the 63 years history of Nigerian breweries. At that time, did you feel like you were carrying the weight of every Nigerian woman in medicine and on your shoulder?
Not really, but I felt very fulfilled, because when I joined Nigerian Breweries, I joined when I turned 40. I joined as middle management, and it was made clear to me that medicine wasn't core at all to the business, and therefore this was probably it for me. So my salary increased with the years. So thinking of becoming senior management, and there's a wide difference between being senior management and middle management in terms of benefits, in terms of status and all that. So it was made clear to me that that wasn't on the cards for me. But some grand old man, may his soul rest in peace, Paul Hammers, a Dutchman, came, rewrote my job description. So I think I just felt a sense of accomplishment, not necessarily because, you see, it was a non-medical field. Think about a doctor in a brewery, but I felt very accomplished. I'm also very pleased that within a month of my becoming a senior manager, one of my best friends, Mrs. Titi Lawani, who was an accountant, and she was an accountant, she also became a senior manager. So we became the first two senior managers, female senior managers in Nigerian breweries. We held a nice party for Mr. Hammers with all the female managers. He said he felt like a child in a cookie shop, surrounded by all the women of Nigerian breweries. But I'm very happy to say since then, there have been several women, even on the board now, and MDs of breweries all over the world, Mozambique and so on, all from Nigerian breweries, so I'm glad.
You spent a decade there.
Yes.
And when you look back at the fact that you finally went into a space where you are leading a corporate entity like your hospital, what would you say are some of the things you learned about healthcare that you couldn't have learned from medical school in that setting?
I learned how to be a manager. And when I was in Nigerian Breweries, I was directly supervised by my colleague from the Netherlands. So and quality was very important to them. So the concept of quality, by nature, I like to do things properly. My father was a very proper person, but then being exposed to quality in healthcare, I think that came from Nigerian Breweries, I must say.
And that you carried along with you?
With me, yes.
Let's go back a bit and say, you're a follower of Christ. You're not just a churchgoer. Christ is central in your life. When would you say Christ became real for you? When did you become born again?
Okay, in February of 1978. So it was my second term in university. I attended a crusade the Explo UI. I wonder if they still have it. But it was an annual crusade targeted at new entrants into the university. And I accepted the Lord. That was Reverend Umar Upai.
The late Umar Upai.
Who passed
on recently.
So he was the one who was the speaker at the crusade. And he gave the altar call to which I answered. And since then, Christ became the center of my life.
Wow. You often say that life was overly fair to you until you had your daughter.
Yes.
It's like you felt like you had it all smooth. But in the early days, you still faced exams that you couldn't pass very well. It took you 3 times to pass your medical test, am I correct?
Not quite. So it wasn't my medical school. I was already a doctor, but I was specializing as a pediatrician.
Okay.
And then there are 3 levels of exams for you to become a specialist pediatrician in Nigeria. So the primary that I passed the first time, and I was actually the only one who passed of the 3 of us who went in from University of Benin Teaching Hospital. But then the part 1 was the first where I repeated it twice, and then it was at the 3rd attempt that I passed.
That was the first time you'll be failing at anything.
That was the first time I was failing, yes.
How did that? Because you were a high achiever, always winning at things, always being first. How did it feel to?
Bad. It was like the end of the world, you know. Like now, like when I look back, I think, gosh, and to think I thought that was a problem. Who died, you know? Yeah, felt bad.
It felt really bad.
And I remember going to check my results. So it would be displayed on a board. Then it was Nebute Meta, what is now the Federal Medical Center. And you look at the board. I went with my 2 children. I had 2 young children then, and they came with me. And my daughter said to me, "Mommy, did you pass?" So if you didn't see your name, then you knew you didn't pass.
Okay.
"Mommy, did you pass?" And I quietly said, "No." And she said, "Oh, not again." And she said it so loud, everybody burst into laughter. Like, this must be an Olodo mommy.
So you felt embarrassed?
I felt quite, and then tears ran down my eyes.
Oh my God.
And I held their hand and we walked back into the car.
Do you think God was using that to prepare some grit in you?
Well.
Or how do you explain? Because later you had to face tougher things.
I met a senior colleague soon after the exams, Dr. Iroha, God bless her. So, and she said to me, "Onyia, I hear that they're trying to make a good pediatrician of you." And I didn't understand. They said you should come back for the exam. Oh, and I rolled my eye. I think it made me a better pediatrician. That's the truth. You know?
How?
In so many ways, because I'm a lot more detailed than I would have been had I passed the first time. I had to read my books again. I had read the books twice. So now I was looking at small print that other people don't look at. I think I'm a better doctor, a better pediatrician, and a better person for having done those exams 3 times. It also taught me some level of humility, so that you think others who fail is not because they are dummies or they didn't do something that they should have done. So it taught me some humility. I don't think it gave me grit as such, because to be honest, when Patricia was born, that took me for 6. Yeah.
Let's talk about Patricia. Yeah. You always refer to that as a life-changing experience.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about how she was born and when you found out about her health situation.
So she was born on the 25th of May, 1994. First and foremost, my second child was already 7 at this point. So I wasn't looking to have another child for all kinds of reasons, especially the fact that my husband and I both had genotype AS. And we had 2 children and neither of them had sickle cell. I thought we had
finished.
That God had helped us and it was a good time to stop. But then Patricia was expected. And then, she was unplanned for. But okay, we welcomed the thought. I had previously done, and I'm saying this openly now, I had once previously done a prenatal diagnosis, and I was told that the baby I was carrying had sickle cell. And I took a decision, which I now know I knew even then that was a bad decision, to terminate the pregnancy. So when I was expecting Patricia, again, the doctor asked me, "So when are you going to do the prenatal diagnosis?" And I said, "I'm not doing again this time. Whatever God blesses me with, I will have." And so But you see, that's why I said I think I had a gift of word of knowledge. From the beginning of that pregnancy, I kept dreaming of a child with a problem. From the beginning, and it was a consistent dream. Almost every night, I dreamt of a child with one problem or the other. My mother had the gift of dreams. She would dream and her dreams would come true. So one day I said to her, Mommy, have you ever dreamt of the face of my child? And she said, no. What I have seen is that I saw the bomb. I saw it was a girl. But I've never seen the face. And I said, Mommy, I keep consistently dreaming of this child with all kinds of disabilities. And my mom says, oh, it's because of this pediatrics. So I had a textbook I read for practical pediatrics that will show you pictures of children with all kinds of problems. And she said, is this stupid book you've been reading? And she sees the book. Meanwhile, I needed to read the book for the exam. So she sees the book from me. She said, when you were having your other children, you were not doing this, your pediatrics then, and you didn't have all these funny dreams. But I knew that there was a problem. I went to church. I fasted as much as a pregnant woman can fast. I told people to pray with me. But so finally, my husband, who wasn't at this point born again, I somehow convinced him with my own concern that there was a problem. So I was tired of waiting. So at 37 weeks, I went to hospital. I said, let me have this baby. Let me see what this baby looks like. And let me start facing the challenges. And so the ultrasound scan didn't show any abnormality. So the doctor delivered her. And I remember going into theater and I said to my husband, usually I will pray. He will defer to me to pray. But I said to him, you pray for me this time. And so we prayed in theater and he prayed a very interesting prayer. He said, God should give us the grace to deal with whatever we see.
Wow.
And then Patricia was born. When she was born, I remember then there were about 4 of us who had babies in the same year after like an interval of like 7-8 years. In my department, and we will all go there with flowers and cards and balloons. So when I recovered from anesthesia, there were no flowers in my room, there were no cards in my room, no balloons, and everybody looked just a bit sad.
Wow.
So I said, where's my baby? And they said, oh, she's in intensive care. She's in, why? This is the baby born by elective section. Why? And there was a pediatrician in attendance. Well, just mild birth, as we say, okay, whatever. Anyway, cut a long story short, my husband said to me, God, I'll tell you one thing. You know, that's very cute. He said, you know, the Onyias have small eyes and the Ogiers have big eyes. But I think Patricia inherited one eye from the Onyias and one from the Ogiers because her left eye was small and blind. But I think he just thought it was small like the Onyias. You know. That was so cute. So I smiled, I chuckled because I knew that wasn't possible. Anyway, finally, I got to see my baby and she was born with at least 6 different disabilities, of which one was life-threatening. So within the first 3 days of life, we had to take her. She was born in Nigeria. And that's another story. So within 3 days of birth, we had to take her to the UK for life-saving surgery, which was no longer being done in Nigeria. Thankfully, it's being done now routinely. But then it wasn't being done in Nigeria. And yet it was a surgery I had witnessed as a medical student 10, 12, 15 years before. But it was no longer, this was the really bad times of healthcare in Nigeria with all the first wave or the second wave of the jackpot. It was the second wave. The first was when I was in medical school. This was the second wave of the jackpot. So, so she had the life-saving surgery in the UK and came back. But despite the fact that we saved her life at the time, you know, she had to live with her other disabilities. It was difficult, you know, seeing her suffer in her short life. She lived for 9 years. She had 5 surgeries, you know.
Wow.
She was a very chirpy, positive child, you know, grateful for little things, but yeah, she suffered.
You said that this was a tough time for you emotionally. You said you actually look back and you feel that you had a 10-year period of depression. Can you?
I think it was more than 10 years ago. I think my depression started from 94 when she was born. And I think that depression only lifted in 2015. So
that was like 20 years.
Yes, of depression. Yeah. But I didn't realize I was depressed.
What were you, as you look back, what were the symptoms that you were seeing that you look back and you know this were the indices showing that it was depression?
I was very irritable. I broke relationships very easily. I took everything personal. nothing made me happy, nothing satisfied me in life. Everything made me displeased. Nothing could satisfy me at the time, I mean, my marriage, of course, took a big hit from that. A lot of my relationships also took a very big hit from my state of mind. So it was mostly, and then I had a strong death wish. I had a strong death wish. First, it was a death wish. So I will open the newspapers. We used to read newspapers then, and I will look at obituaries, and I will envy the people. I will think, this one is lucky, at least their own is over. Suicide for me wasn't really an option. Because of my faith, I knew that as a Christian, it wasn't supposed to be an option that should be open to me. But I remember once, walking along the streets of London from the Great Ormond Street Hospital, where she was born, to my friend's apartment where I was staying. And you know how they move, those narrow roads in London, and their little cars moving very fast. I was so tempted then to just step in front of it. And then the picture of my other two children, Onyia and Abasam, flashed. And I knew I couldn't do it.
Did you blame God, or how did you see God during this period?
I blamed God.
What was going through your mind about God?
I blamed God big time because I prayed. I had faith. And before then, God had been, like I said, lived a charmed life. I didn't want too many things. I've never really been maybe because I never lacked, so I never really had strong desires for things. But anything I wanted and everything that was my due. I mean, I got married, had children, had my first child, a girl, the second a boy. None of them had sickle cell, things like that. So
things were moving well.
Things were moving well. I was happily married. My husband, there's a significant, reasonable age gap between us. He was nice and indulgent to me and all that. So yeah, things were moving well. And then suddenly this, and then I saw it coming and I prayed.
Against it.
Yeah. So, and I'm not a superstitious sort. I'm not the sort to think, or maybe somebody in the family. So it was like God. In fact, I remember having a conversation once with God and saying, with friends like you, why do I need an enemy? I felt crushed.
Abandoned by him.
I felt a little bit like Job, crushed, everything piling on me. Because I remember after the surgery, I was successful and we were so pleased. And I appreciate that about British doctors. So Mr. Drake sat me, looked me straight in the eye, and started telling me, yes, the surgery was successful, but this and that. And as she kept piling them on all the things she had noticed, she wouldn't hear, one eye is blind, she still can't swallow, and so on and so forth. I kept shouting, in pidgin English, I don't die, poor man,
And he didn't know what you were saying.
Well, whatever, and he will wait for me to finish all my...
Before you continue.
And then he would say the next one. So he made sure everything came across so I had no illusion about what I was dealing with. And he was trained that I was a pediatrician, so I had a deep understanding of these things. So yes, I felt...
It was a heavy weight on you.
It was at the time. But I must also admit that in the 9 years of her life, God always gave me hope. So when things appear to be going bad, something will happen to remind me that first, there's still God, that he's still there, he still cares, and he still can. Give
you an example of something that would happen. Because it's so difficult to notice those things in the midst of that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so for example, when I'm feeling so low, sometimes suddenly her speech will improve, or she will start to walk. Small things like that.
Some hope will come.
Something will happen that will show that God is still in charge of what was going on. But
yeah. And how did you manage to get out of the depression? What was the turning point? You talked about a sermon.
A sermon that I heard.
Okay, tell us about that.
So my friend, the dentist I'm just coming from now.
The one in Ikeja here.
In Ikeja. Well, she's really in VI, but I've met her in her Ikeja branch. Shade Akiyode. We had been schoolmates in secondary school in Queen's College. And we're now neighbors and we're good friends. So there was this church close to our houses, because we both live in the same neighborhood. And of course, like the good judges that we often are, I will look at the billboards and I will think...
Good judges.
I will look at the billboard and think, are they advertising Christ or are they advertising themselves? You know how modern churches will put the pastor's picture there.
So you became self-righteous over them.
Yeah, and I just made up my mind, nothing will take me to this kind of church. And then she invited me and I didn't go. But then she knew at this point that my marriage was struggling. So the pastor had preached a series of sermons in September on Mr. and Mrs. Better Half. And she bought me the CDs. Those were the days of CDs. And she gave them to me. And I thanked her, but I didn't think I was ever going to listen to them. But one day I was driving to work and there was traffic, so nothing to do. So I slotted one of the CDs in. And I heard the kind of sermons I had last heard when I was in the Christian Union in university.
Wow.
Not the kind of sermons you heard in modern day churches, even in the more orthodox ones. And I thought, gosh, these people have some depth to them. I didn't think so. Like I said, of course, we had judged. I had judged. So when in February she invited me to church, I went. And then the pastor, Pastor Godman Akilabi of the Elevation Church, preached a sermon on a beautiful life. And he said, when God said, man should not, it's not good that man should be alone, he wasn't just talking about the marital relationship. He was talking about just being connected to people. He says we are designed, we are created to be connected. And that when people live by themselves in isolation, they become, or when people are disconnected, they become dysfunctional. And he contrasted the man whose 4 friends raised the ceiling to put him down for healing, and the man who was by the pool of Siloam, who says, I've been here for 38 years and I have no one. And he said one was connected, so it's connected that his friend's faith is what healed him. They are the ones who raised the ceiling. They are the ones who believed Christ could help. And then he gave reasons why people became disconnected. The people are proud, or they're beneath me, or they're above me, or whatever. I'm shy, all kinds of reasons. But he talked about something he called deep offense. And he talked about John the Baptist taking offense in Christ. And I realized that I had taken offense with 2 of my friends who I felt were not supportive.
In that season.
In that season. Exactly. So I just immediately gave it up to Christ, because I'm usually a very forgiving person. I'm not one to bear grudges. But this time I held on to those grudges. I sent a message to one of them, and I said to her, I think this has gone on for long enough. Let's have drinks and make up. And so we had drinks. We didn't talk about the problem, because also, again, I realized that it wasn't personal. It was just who she was. I don't think it's easy for her to make friends with people who are going through hard times. Some people are like that. And so I just accepted her for who she is. And we're still good friends. I mean, it's not the way it was in the past, but we're still friends. And
that started your healing process.
I think I just got healed, almost instantly healed, because everything turned
by forgiving, you got healed from that season. But not only that, how you moved from this tragedy to turn it into a cornerstone of what has become a blessing and an institution today. I'm talking about the Pelon Memorial Hospital here in Nigeria, which, for those who don't know, Pelon is an acronym from the names of your daughter.
Yes.
Patricia, what was the middle one?
Elozier.
Onyia. Onyia. So it was from there, was based on her that you formed this hospital. Our time is running really hard. Now I want to do this in the part 2 of it, but the part is that most people get buried under their trauma, but you converted your trauma into a source of blessing to the society. Was there a word from God that made you do that? Before we talk about the whole Pelon establishment, just where did that idea come from? What bettered that?
I think, to be fair, the truth is my father was my role model.
Okay.
He ran his own hospital. It was Ike Memorial Hospital, in memory of his brother and benefactor.
Who had gone.
Who had gone. So in the same way, I just thought, keep Patricia's memory alive, and I started the hospital. She benefited a lot from healthcare, mostly in South Africa. And so, I just thought to give back.
In her name.
And then to model what I saw and I liked, and to ensure that those things I did not like, that I received in healthcare, mostly in Nigeria, that people will not go through that under my care.
Pelon has grown now to be an establishment, not just a one-man thing. Like you said before we came on air, you wanted to avoid your daddy's mistake. Tell me a bit about it, because that was offline. You watched him, you copied a lot of things from him, but there's something you didn't want to copy from him.
So my father started his hospital in 1972, but in 1998, when he got tired, he just converted the building to apartments. He didn't pass it on. By the way, the motto of my school is pass on the torch.
Okay.
But anyway, so I thought to myself, I had done an MBA, Lagos Business School, which is where I met our mutual friend. We were classmates. And I was aiming to build an institution, something that will outlive me. And so succession was part of my plan from the beginning. So
Pelon was not something that would come and get folded up.
No.
It was something that would continue being a health institution long after you've gone.
That was my dream. That was my hope.
And we'll talk a bit more about Pelon. We're going to break now for the first part of our interview with Dr. Onyia, and we're going to continue next week. Dr. Onyia is she's a mentor, a mother, a health advocate, an advocate for patient-centered healthcare. Did I get that correct?
Very correct.
And she's also the founder and managing director of Pelon Memorial Health Hospital here in Lagos, in Nigeria. We'll come back next week as we discuss how she was able to not only turn her trauma into a source of blessing, but how she has gone on to advocate for a quality of healthcare here on the soil of Nigeria that sometimes people have to go abroad to get. Thank you so much, Ngozi, for being with me this week.
Thank you for having me.
We'll continue in our second part next week.
Please like this video and leave a comment below. Let's know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell button and share this video with somebody else.